If your net worth is under $100,000, you have no business spending $100 on a single date. And by the end of this video, you may realize that even $10 may actually be too much. Most people don't realize how fast dating expenses add up. With wealth inequality growing every year, you can't afford to be careless with your money. My name is Brian, and I'm an analyst by trade, and I have spent years optimizing my finances and my dating life. I don't believe in wasting money just to impress people. And that's why I came up with the 0.01% rule. It is a system that forces discipline first while still leaving room to live a little. The rule is simple. Never spend more than 0.01% of your net worth on a single date. That means if your net worth is $100,000, do not spend more than $10 on a single date. Sound too strict? Not really. And in this video, I will show you why I came up with the 0.01% rule, how the 0.01% rule works, how the math is mathing, and how to apply it to your dating life right now. Why I came up with the 0.01% rule. The story starts in 2023. I had just gotten out of a relationship, and over the course of 2023 and 2024, I went on over 200 dates. On average, I probably spent about $50 to $100 per date, which adds up to about $10,000 to $20,000 over the course of those 2 years, or about $10K per year, which is a pretty substantial amount to be spending on dates. If you invested $10,000 every year into an index fund at a 10% annual return, that would yield $4.5 million after 40 years. As a matter of fact, if you only invested $10,000 once and never added a single penny again, that would yield you almost $500,000, $500,000. So technically, I spent $500,000 every year on dates those 2 years. At this point, I started questioning, am I overspending on dating? I probably was. According to BMO Financial Group, the average American spends about $2,300 per year on dating, with the all-in cost of a single date being around $170. That means the average American goes on about 13 to 14 dates per year. To add on to that, it takes typically 10 dates before singles commit to a relationship, meaning it costs almost $1,700 just to start a relationship. Ironically, single Gen Z spends the most at $194 per date, despite being the youngest and least financially established generation. However, people in relationships actually spend more on dates. Millennial men in relationships are actually the top spenders, averaging $252 per date, well above the national average. For context, I rarely spend more than $150 on a single date, so maybe I have a lower spending tolerance than the average person. So while people can allocate their money however they like, it can still be worthwhile to calculate what people can actually afford given average income and expenses. Enter John. John is a typical 30-year-old male, and he makes about $60,000 a year. After taxes, his take-home pay is about $4,000 a month, which is $48,000 a year, which is a pretty standard income. Let's see what his monthly expenses would look like. Let's allocate $1,500 to rent, which is a reasonable amount to be paying depending on the city that he's living in. He could either get a one bedroom or maybe he'll have to share and get a roommate. Let's allocate another $500 to utility bills and other bills like internet and phone. Let's allocate another $500 to his car payment and his car insurance. Let's allocate another $500 to groceries and other necessary household expenses. With that, John has about $1,000 left over per month to spend on whatever he wants. This is his discretionary spending bucket, which is about $12,000 a year. Not a lot. So how much can John reasonably spend on dates? Well, that depends on both the frequency of the dates and the cost per date. Now, let's say John goes on 5 dates per week. That means the $50, $100, and $200 dates are completely unaffordable. He could go on $25 dates, but that is probably not ideal given that he would be spending half his discretionary allocation on just dating alone. So given his income level, he probably cannot afford to go out 5 times a week. Now what if John goes on 3 dates per week? Now the math here is a little more reasonable. Still, the $100 and $200 dates are not affordable, but the $25 dates are now much more affordable. John would spend roughly a third of his discretionary spending on dates if he were to go on 3 dates a week, which is a little more reasonable if that is John's main hobby. $50 still remain at an ideal range, as John would be spending the majority of his savings on dates in that case. If John's going on only 1 date per week, which is a lot more reasonable, he actually may be able to afford to go on $100 dates, but still the $200 dates are out of reach. Now finally, if John only goes on 1 date per month, then he can pretty much afford the $200 dates as well. So as you can see here, the affordability of dating is heavily dependent on the frequency of the dates. If you don't go on a lot of dates, you can actually afford to spend $200 on a date. So for the average guy, if you're casually dating and meeting multiple people per week, you really can only afford cheap dates. If you're going on 1 date per week, then if you're only going on a few dates per month, there's room to spend a little more. But other than that, if you are going on that many dates, you cannot afford to be spending that much. Now, technically, John can choose to save 100% of his money and not go on any dates. but that's not realistic. The better approach is to save and invest the majority of it while still spending a little bit on discretionary expenses like dating. So the question now becomes, exactly how much should John spend? Enter the 0.01% rule. So why does the 0.01% rule work? To recap, the 0.01% rule says, never spend more than 0.01% of your net worth on a single date. I base this rule off net worth because it is a more stable metric of wealth than income. People can spend their entire incomes, but net worth is long-term wealth. Since invested assets generally appreciate 5 to 15% a year, the key question now is, what is a negligible slice of your net worth that you can spend each year? I'd argue 1 to 2%. Even though technically that would still affect your wealth compounding, we have to live a little. So the assumption here is, if someone goes on 2 dates per week, which translates to roughly 100 days per year, if we divide 1% by 100, we get 0.01%, which is where the 0.01% rule comes from. Because if a single date only costs you 0.01% of your net worth, you can go on 100 dates per year, and that would still only add up to 1% of your net worth. If you're only spending 0.01% per date, even at 200 dates per year, that's still only 2%. And honestly, 200 days per year is plenty. For example, if you have $100,000 in an index fund and it yields you $10,000 per year, you can go on 3 coffee dates per week at $10 per date, which is 150 dates per year, and that would add up to $1,500 per year, which is completely offset by your investment returns. But here's the catch. Realistically, you cannot only go on coffee dates. So how can you apply this rule in practice? Applying the 0.01% rule in real life. We'll go through a chart with different date types you can go on and how often based on your net worth. So first off, we have the Cheesecake Factory. This is probably more of a mid-range dining option. If your net worth is under 250K, you should really only be doing this maybe once a month. Once you make a little more, then you could honestly go on this maybe even weekly. And if you're a millionaire, you can probably go whenever you want. Next up, we have coffee. I've listed Starbucks here if you're feeling fancy, but I would say a Starbucks date should cost around $10 to $20. If it's a normal coffee date, maybe $5 to $10. Anyone can afford a coffee date and you can go whenever you like. Even if you were to go on a coffee date every single day, that should only run you a couple thousand a year. So that is affordable for most people. Next up, we have grabbing drinks. The cost of getting drinks will be heavily dependent on how much you drink. If you're both only getting 1 or 2 drinks, it should really only cost you maybe $30, $40. However, if you're both heavy drinkers, this can pull up the tab up to $100. So this is really heavily dependent on how much you drink. And also, if you're getting food at a bar as well, it can be as low as just grabbing 1 drink each, which is $20, or it's basically a full-fledged dinner, but at a bar. Under 250K, I would say you probably should not drink more than twice a week. And if you're a millionaire, of course, whenever you like. Next up, we have bowling or any sort of activities type of day, like mini golf, or even watching a movie. I just grouped these two together because they are similarly priced. A movie for 2 is probably around $40, $50. Same thing for going bowling or mini golfing. Little costs add up, and there's also snacks and concession. So about $50. If you're making under 250K a year, you can probably do this maybe once a week. If you're making more, probably a couple times a week. If you're a millionaire, honestly, whenever you want. Next up, we have the cheapest dates that people tend to like. Walking dates and hiking dates. I've also grouped these two together because they're essentially free unless you're planning to bring snacks or there's some sort of entrance fee to the hiking trail. In this case, no matter what your net worth is, you can go on as many hiking dates as you would like. Next up, we have concert or theater dates. These tickets can be very expensive, so this will vary greatly based off the exact show you're seeing. A Broadway show could cost hundreds of dollars per ticket, while a ticket for a small artist at a small venue could just be $20. I would assume, though, if you're going on a date, this would probably be somewhere decent at least, and it would probably be closer to at least $100 for 2. If you are making under 250K a year, this should be a special occasion. If you're making a little more, maybe once a month. And if you are a millionaire, you honestly could go whenever you like, but depending on the cost, you should probably still cut it down a little. And just in terms of the time investment of a concert, a good balance is probably limiting it to once per week, even if you were a millionaire. Next up, we have sports games. Similar to concerts and theater, this can vary greatly. Good seats to an NBA game could be hundreds of dollars, while a minor league ticket could just be $50. However, I am assuming if you're going on a date for these events, it is probably something more substantial. So this will fit pretty similarly with the concert and theater category. If your net worth is under 250K, this should probably be a special occasion. If you're not a millionaire yet, maybe once a month. And even if you were a millionaire, I would say probably once a week is a good amount. Next up, we have museum dates. Most museum tickets are probably between $20 to $40. Now for 2, maybe $50 to $80. So Pretty decent price range, but still not something you want to be doing all the time. If your net worth is under 250K, maybe once or twice a month. If your net worth is between 250,000 and $1 million, maybe once a week. And if you're a millionaire, honestly, you can go whenever you like. You can go 2 or 3 times a week. I would say every day is probably overkill for most people. I don't even think anyone, unless you have a specific hobby, would like to visit a museum that often. But you do you. Finally, my favorite restaurant. Just kidding. Not my favorite restaurant. But McDonald's or fast food. Now the thing is fast food used to be cheap. It is no longer cheap. Right now, if you were to go to a fast food place and only order from their deal section or their value menu section, you would still probably need to pay almost $10 to get a decent meal. If you were to get some of the more mainstream combos, like a Big Mac combo or just any combo at a fast food restaurant, that's going to run you over $10. And for 2, probably closer to $30, which is insane because fast food should not be costing you $30. Fast food is actually more expensive than a coffee date, and I am sad to say I cannot even recommend going on this whenever you like. And you probably shouldn't be eating McDonald's every day either. If your net worth is under 250K for McDonald's or any other fast food place, you can probably go a couple times a week. If your net worth is above 250K, you can probably go whenever you like. And of course, if you're a millionaire, you can definitely go whenever you like. Next up, we have fine dining. I have represented fine dining as Nobu. Honestly, this can be any sort of Michelin or just fine dining expensive restaurant where the bill is expected to be over $100. In this range, if your net worth is under 250K, you should not be going to these restaurants regularly, maybe a few times a year. That would put it in the special occasion category. If your net worth is above 250K but under $1 million, even in this case, you should not be going more than once or twice a month. These expenses do add up. Going to a restaurant like this for 2 could easily be a bill that's $200, $300, $400. And that's basically an additional car payment or additional utility bill. That's not something you want to be paying multiple times a month. Even if you are in the 250 to 1 million range, you probably should not be fine dining for more than once a month. Finally, if your net worth is over $1 million, you probably should still limit this to maybe once a week, unless you're a multi-millionaire or you have millions and millions of dollars or you're a billionaire, then honestly, you can go whenever you like. At that point, why are you watching this video? Now, if you made it this far through the video, you may be wondering, why am I only basing my rule off net worth? If you're a doctor or software engineer making $300K a year, can you spend more? Technically, yes. But should you? No. Chances are, if you clicked on this video, you're not the spend it all type. You're looking for optimal. And the optimal path is to invest your money into assets, which yield returns, and to use that cash flow to then pay for experiences. That way, your money is working for you. And that's why I advocate for limiting your dating spending based on net worth. If you're spending directly from your paycheck, you're essentially trading time for money, which is not ideal. Ideally, you want to be spending from your investment returns. That is true financial leverage. For example, if you earn $50 an hour and you spend $250 on a date, you technically traded away 5 hours of your time. But if your investments are able to cover that $250 dinner, you didn't trade time at all, even though technically money still left your pocket. But in that case, you're building a more disciplined system for creating generational wealth. Now, if you're interested in seeing more analytical content on dating and self-improvement, hit subscribe.